Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today. Many of the larger comics-related channels on YouTube really don't do a good job of going out here to sell comics. And most of the popular comics YouTube channels usually make most of their money and get most of their views from complaining about the problems going on at Marvel and DC Comics. And as these channels go out here and make reactionary videos to clickbait articles that are presented on platforms like Bleeding Cool and comic book resources, they basically ignore most of these small independent comic creators like myself and many others who are working tirelessly towards creating our own comics, and they also go out here and ignore many of the absolutely good comics that are on the marketplace because it just doesn't fit their narrative. Now, when it comes down to most of the comic YouTubers who are very popular, they get most of their clicks and views by promoting doom and gloom. And as they go out here promoting doom and gloom, talking about how bad things are at Marvel and DC Comics, as they react to clickbait articles written by people at Bleeding Cool and comic book resources, they basically ignore most of the industry out here and many of these small independent creators and even some of the books over at Marvel and DC Comics. And the reason why they basically ignore most of those small independent creators and many of the good books that are out there is because it just does not fit the narrative of these comic YouTubers who want to build their platform by promoting negativity. And as they go out here and promote negativity on their platforms, what they do is go out here and have everybody getting a twisted perception of the entire comic book industry. Now, as somebody who has been studying the business and working on his own publishing imprint, I have gone out here and studied the industry objectively, and I can see that there are a lot of good books out there being promoted by independent creators, and many of those independent creators could go out here and get more sales if they were able to get exposure on platforms. Now, many of these comic YouTubers, they'll talk about social justice warriors ruining the industry as related to their favorite Marvel and DC characters, but they won't go out here and give promotion to one of the smaller independent creators like myself out here and allow us to generate some sales. No, that they don't have time to do that because they want to go out here and clout chase as related to Marvel and DC. And while they're clout chasing as relating to getting clicks and views as related to Marvel and DC related content, many are creating a covert contract, believing that if they go out here and continue to complain about Marvel and DC, they will be able to go out here and get themselves a gig over at Marvel and DC Comics, similar to what that a woman did as related to the Women and Refrigerators website and what she did to go out here and get herself a job, because that's what this author did as related to creating the Women in Refrigerators website. And as she did this back in the 90s, she thought, oh, I'll get this job at DC, and managed to get her job at DC, getting lots of different gigs. And that's what many of the comic YouTubers believe that they can go out here and do. By complaining constantly about Marvel and DC, they believe that this will show how passionate they are to many of those in editorial, and they believe that this will open a door with them as related to editorial. And again, that really doesn't help the overall comic book industry, which has been struggling for years, and even I'd say 30 years at that, 3 decades. And with the industry struggling for over 3 decades, we have people who have large platforms with sometimes 50, 60, 70, even 100,000 subscribers, and they're not looking to turn that into sales. No, what they're looking to do is turn that into views, where they just go out here grousing about how bad whatever Marvel or DC comic is, without ever giving other creators an opportunity to talk about their really good quality books, or even talking about some of the Marvel and DC comics that are of high quality that have been out there. I mean, I find it interesting we have not heard from many of these comic YouTubers talking about many of the good books that are out there, like Moon Knight or Ghost Rider or at Marvel, or talking about The Flash or Nightwing at DC. Have not heard many people recommending these books, which are absolutely having stellar runs at this point. No, they would rather spend all day complaining about the really bad books, but complaining about the bad books without going out here and talking about the good ones doesn't really move the needle on sales, as one comics YouTuber used to say. And another thing that they don't do is go out here and give independent comic creators an opportunity to expand their audience, because while we have a lot of comic creators making money on Kickstarter, we really don't have comics YouTube going out here and giving those comic creators the endorsement they need in order to go out here and generate more sales, because they are sitting there thinking, oh, Marvel and DC are comics, but the medium of comics is not just Marvel or DC's superheroes. No, comics is a medium with a lot of great stories and great storytelling, but comics YouTube refuses to focus on those stories outside of maybe a few channels like my own, where I actively go out here and look for the good comics from independent comic creators and try to shine a spotlight on those comics so that they can go out here and build an audience. And what's really sad to me is that as I'm out here trying to help get many indie creators the exposure they need, sadly these are the least watched videos on this channel, and sadly those videos don't really even generate enough views to even be able to pay for many of the comics that I go out here and purchase, because I love the medium and I want to see great independent creators go out here and be able to continue creating their work. Moreover, when I would do comic review videos, I would try to go out here and try to give creators constructive criticism so that they could go out here and improve their craft, because I want to see the comics medium continue to grow, and I want to see talented creators be able to improve their craft on their talent and become better writers and artists. That's one of the reasons why I do comic review videos, is because I want comic pros to improve in their craft and become better at what they're doing. And indie creators, a lot of them are grateful for my review videos. Even though they get low views, they get views from the creators who appreciate the work I put in. But I just look at comics YouTube, where you've got people with 50, 60, 70, 100,000 subscribers, and they're not looking to help improve the medium. They're not looking to help put over other creators. They're not looking to get the word out like other creators. No, they're still sitting here waiting for Marvel and DC to get their act together. Well, I hate to say it, but after 30 years, Marvel and DC aren't getting their act together. No, they have continuously got worse. And it's just time to go out here and focus on the indies and focus on new characters. Now, when I was a kid in the 80s, we had the black and white comic craze of the 80s, and a lot of great characters came out of that black and white craze that went on to gain followings. And it gained followings because the word of mouth back then was out about promoting those books so that they could build a readership, and readers were open to them, and they were open to giving new indie creators an opportunity to show and showcase their talent. But comics YouTube won't even talk to many indie creators like myself. No, they blow guys like me off and ignore creators like me. No, what they do is only want to focus on clout chasing with those who have so-called large subscriber bases, and ignore very talented creators and don't want to give them the time of day. And again, that's really detrimental to the business, because if you really want the business to thrive, then you're going to want to go out here and support brand new independent creators, because brand new independent creators, what we do is create new, fresh, and original stories, and we try to build our readership on new, fresh, and original stories instead of trying to rehash the clones or symbiotes or Phoenix Force or Infinity Gems. Plot devices have basically ran their course. Instead of us complaining about plot devices that have run their course at Marvel and DC, what we want to do is create new stories and new characters, and we're trying to build the audience. But the problem is you have Comics YouTube that doesn't go out here and look to support new independent creators. I mean, I don't see next to any videos talking about many of the books that I see on Kickstarter, nor do I see anybody looking to review many of the independent books. I mean, outside of my own channel and maybe Diverse Pop and Comics, I don't see many people talking about many of the great new books that are out there. I mean, you don't see anybody talking positively about comics. No, it's all doom and gloom, and that doom and gloom is really not really helping the industry get the new readers that it says it desperately wants. I mean, you have many of them in Comics YouTube saying, we want new readers, but we're not making any efforts to go out here and reach those new readers by going out here and promoting new creators with fresh concepts that can reach new audiences of readers because they relate to those newer characters and their stories. No, there's just a heavy focus on many of these of Marvel and DC, and the constant focus on Marvel and DC just really doesn't help the overall industry. Yes, I know superhero comics are extremely popular and they are considered the lifeblood of the industry, but when I look at comics as a medium, we really have to start focusing on some of the independent creators, because the independent creators are the future. And the independent creators are the future because they have the new characters and new ideas that will be popular in the 21st century. Because I hate to break it to those who are wedded to Marvel and DC, those characters basically are on their way out. I mean, Superman is getting close to 100 years old, and many of these other characters are getting close to a century, and the next generation are not really going to be connected to them. To them, it's going to be like when I was growing up in the 80s, as related to Zorro and Popeye and many of those other 1920s and 1930s characters. Many of those kids are not even going to know who these characters are, and that's why we have to focus on creating new characters and trying to support independent comic creators, because while we loved these characters, they are basically, again, on their way out, and again, trying to support a Marvel and DC, hoping that they will change. That's not going to change anything, because Marvel and DC, basically, they are no longer companies that are about publishing quality stories that much anymore. No, their main focus are to be a warehouse for these IPs so that they can go out here and license them in merchandising and making things like movies. So their main focus isn't about creating quality comics, and that's why if you're a part of Comics YouTube, you need to be focused on creating support for newer independent creators like myself and many others, because we're trying to create new stories and new characters for a new generation of people. But when I look at Comics YouTube, they're not really focused on trying to, again, get the readership up. No, it's about getting the views and the clicks up. And as they're focused on only getting the views and the clicks up, what they're doing is leaving an industry that continues to struggle, because much of the independent talent doesn't get the light shined on it. Much of the independent talent doesn't get the attention it deserves. Many of the great books out here just basically get ignored, as they just react to outrage as related to clickbait out here, such as much of the controversies surrounding Kamala Khan or Tim Drake. Again, when I look at the whole controversy around Kamala Khan, it's a nothing burger, nothing to even get upset about, because death has been a major part of the Marvel Universe since 1986 with the return of Jean Grey. And again, it no longer has any sort of merit after the death of Jean Grey. So you have a lot of people writing big clickbait articles. Oh, there's this death here, and people are reacting to it. Meanwhile, guys like Jeremy Adams are having a masterpiece run on The Flash and getting ignored. Guys like Tom Taylor are putting together a masterpiece run on Nightwing. You've got Jed McKay doing just great work on Moon Knight, and all of these creators getting ignored. Whereas in the 90s, those creators would have gotten a light shined on them, and that would have generated more sales. But the whole controversial market of clickbait, this has created a cottage industry that has created a vicious cycle for the comic book YouTube, because comics YouTube, again, originally started to try to shine a light on indie creators, but has now focused heavily on Marvel and DC to the point where independent creators are just being, like myself, are being forgotten, and many of our books and many of the projects we create really can't get exposure and the support that would allow us to expand to a larger audience. So I think about, again, what's sadly happening as related to comics YouTube, and it's become an echo chamber, and it's become an echo chamber that is all about complaining about the comic book industry and has not facilitated any change, because 5 or 6 years after your so-called Comicsgate, what has happened is that the whole comics YouTube has not really had an impact. No, it's been marginalized to the point where it has no impact whatsoever as related to many creators out here, and it really doesn't do anything except create its own cottage industry of whining and complaining, again, hoping to fulfill a covert contract with Marvel and DC, hoping that somebody will see their big grand Kickstarter or their big grand Indiegogo, and after they hear all of their complaining, they will be able to go out here and do what I think Gail Simone did, because she's the original, I think, woman in refrigerators website creator. I just remembered her name. And they're hoping to get the same deal that Gail Simone got. Unfortunately, there's no deal as related to things. And again, you would think, why are you looking for a deal if you own your own IPs? Because as a publisher of my own IPs running the SJS Direct imprint, I'm not looking for getting a deal with Marvel and DC. No, I'm looking to build my own wealth and own my own IPs, because why would I go out here and look to go out here and work for somebody else when I'm getting paid for myself? That's the critical thing many related to comics YouTube don't really think about, because all they're thinking about is getting those clicks and views while they complain about SJWs, while they complain about bad stories and bad characters, when the smart thing to do is to just ignore those books, because they just come and go every year, and focus on making your product the very best it can be. Because if you focus on making your product the very best it can be, you can build your customer base and reach customers by showing that you have a better, reputable product. That should be the goal here, along with trying to help out other creators. That's what I'm doing right now, while I'm working on my own SJS Direct books, like John Haynes at Death's Door, and many of the other books on the SJS Direct imprint as related to fantasy. When I see a good comic, I go out here and give that creator promotion. I go out here and try to put more their books on my channel so that they can get more exposure, because this is how you build an independent creator and build their momentum. And when you have more creators out here creating quality books and they're getting sales, then comic shops can survive, because they don't have to sit there and take losses on Marvel and DC, because people will be coming in the store for something better, and that's what will help the industry overall. But comics YouTube doesn't look like it wants to help the industry. No, all they want to do is create a place for themselves where they get these clicks and views. And again, those clicks and views are very addictive, but they don't bring change to an industry that desperately needed change 30 years ago, and an industry that's just struggling for years. And if it wasn't for the corporate money of Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery, would have been gone a long time, and that would have been the hard lesson that comics YouTube would have learned. But again, comics YouTube isn't really about selling comics. It's all about selling a narrative, and that narrative really isn't selling many comics today. Now, if you want to pick up my first comic, which was in a Kickstarter last year, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that full comic in paperback on lulu.com by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to pick up my first comic that I did with Bill Walko, Easting, No Good Deed, you can find that comic on Kindle for 99 cents. And if you want to pick up some of my action-packed fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, and the John Haynes series, you can find those books along with my other books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes, 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.